Hey everybody, Ted back with stuff you might like, and today I wanted to talk photo editing software, specifically Luminar 4. Now this release happened a few weeks ago and I was off away for Thanksgiving, so I didn't get a chance to do a video on it, but I've been using it for almost a month now, and I wanted to give you my thoughts and show you how these new tools that Luminar 4 offers, how they work in action. Now just as a little bit of backstory, I've been using Luminar since before it was even Luminar. Luminar really started with MacFun when they released Tonality a number of years ago, probably about 6 years ago. And that was my primary tool for creating black and white images. And Tonality morphed into Luminar a few years ago. And with Luminar Release 3, Skylum, well, MacFun, who became Skylum, added a digital asset manager. This is a tool that allows you to organize your images, it allows you to rate them, it allows you to sort them, and allows you to create different catalogs within inside your catalog, different folders and different collections and groups. I have used this tool alongside Adobe Lightroom, which I still subscribe to, but Luminar has really become my main tool that I use over the last year. I'd say I'd probably use Luminar 90% of the time for most of the stuff and Lightroom for the other 10. There are some things that Luminar doesn't do that Lightroom does, and I'll cover those in this video. So without any further ado, let's jump into Luminar.
Okay, so here I am in Luminar. I'm in the library view. I'm at my root folder for my library, and this is showing all the photos I've taken in 2019 and all the subfolder that come with it. And I've got my thumbnails set to largest, but you could bump that down to smaller if you wanted to see more of your photos at one time. I tend to keep this set on the large setting, which shows me a good amount of photos. You'll see here that I'm looking at all photos, but you can filter this based upon your favorites, anything you said is rejected, unmarked, and then you've got a star rating system from 1 to 5, and then you've also got tags, red, yellow, blue, green, purple, and unlabeled, etc. And of course you can sort by capture time, edit time, pick, color label, file name, file type, and file size, and you can alternate between ascending and descending. Now what you cannot do is you cannot filter these by metadata. So Luminar does not allow you to filter by camera metadata like you can do in Lightroom. You can't filter by lens type, you can't filter by f-stop, you can't filter by camera body, etc. So that's something I would hope they would bring to Luminar in the future. It's something I use in Lightroom still a good bit when I'm trying to, say, show a different lens or a different camera body image. It's good to be able to sort by that criteria. But for the sake of this demonstration, I'm going to go from looking at all photos to looking at 4 favorites that I've selected for the purpose of this demonstration. And I've got 4 photos here, and I'm going to run through Luminar's different features using these 4 photos. Now the first one is a long exposure of Atlanta's downtown as dusk approaches. And I'm going to show you in this one that you can, let me just reset this to its default settings. There we go. So just like Lightroom or Capture One or pretty much any raw editor, you've got the basic light tools here. You got temperature, tint, exposure, contrast, highlights, and shadows as well. And I can bump the highlights, or sorry, I can bump the shadows, and I can increase the exposure to brighten this photo a little bit. And I can add some structure as well. But what I'm going to do in this instance is I'm going to reset these and show you how you can use the AI Enhance feature. Now the AI Enhance feature will basically evaluate your photo, and using Luminar's artificial intelligence, it will apply what it feels are the correct settings to improve the photo. So with just one slider, you can see here I'm adjusting the exposure, I'm bringing up the shadows, and I'm doing all of that with just one slider. So that's a pretty powerful feature in itself. This was present in Luminar 3, I believe, and it has sprung into 3 new features that are in Luminar 4, which I will get into in the next example. So if I go back to my grid view and I'll come over to this photo here, I'm going to first, before I edit this photo, I'm going to crop it so I can get rid of that awning. I'll unlock that and I will bring this down. So here's a photo I took last year at Disney Hollywood Studios of the Indiana Jones stunt show as it was in progress. And you'll see here I've got the foreground figures and landscape pretty much silhouetted against the bright, beautiful blue Orlando sky. So I'm going to come over here to the creative tab, I guess you can call it a tab, area, and I'm going to go to AI Sky Replacement. Now this is one of the new signature features in Luminar 4, and what it basically allows you to do is take any photo and swap in with a single click a different sky. Now you see here that Luminar comes pre-populated with a about 20 or so different skies, but you can drop in your own. And I'm just going to check here dramatic sunset. As I drop it in, you see Luminar applies the mask, and using its AI, it brings in this sky as a background. Now you've got a few options here. You can blend the horizon using this slider here, and you can move it up, down. You can see here as I adjust it, the horizon is blended a bit more. You can also move the horizon's position. I can move this up, or I could move it down. And you can adjust the lighting of the scene. As I bump this all the way up to 100, you can see the slight changes it makes. You've also got options to edit the mask as well. So if you're doing landscape and architecture especially, if you're taking pictures of homes and houses and you're get a picture of a house but you're unfortunately limited to a drab and dreary sky, you could use this quickly to swap in a more standard sky, like say for a blue sky or any number of these versions of blue skies that they come with. And give you a much more usable photo than what you would have started with. So that's AI Sky Replacement, and it's a pretty useful feature, one that I probably won't use, but it's one that you might find handy. Now, for the next two tools, I'm going to use two portraits of my daughters, and this first one here, I'm going to zoom in a little bit, and you'll see I've got a portrait of a teenager with typical teenager skin, and I'm going to come over to Portrait and AI Skin Enhancer. And you see I've got two settings here. I've got amount of skin enhancement, and I've got an AI skin defects removal. So the first thing is I'm going to apply the AI skin enhancer with the slider. I'm going to bring it all the way up to 100. You can see here it basically softens the skin. It smooths over the pores and the complexion and does it all very seamlessly just with the bit of a slider. So 0, 100%. And if I click the AI skin defects removal, you'll see this little defect here, little blemish, disappears. Again, turn that off, reappears, turn it back on, reappears. So with just a slide and a check, I've done what would have taken a good bit of time in Photoshop or in Lightroom using their tools. And I can do it in just a couple seconds in Luminar. So that's a pretty handy tool if you do portraits all day. Now there's also an additional portrait tool. That's the Portrait Enhancer. And I'm going to click on that for this photo. And you've got a number of different options here with Portrait Enhancer. The first is Face Light, and as you'd suspect, it basically just applies a mask around the face and it brightens it up. So if I apply this all the way to 100, you can see here that the face is now much more bright than it was. Turn it off, turn it on, turn it off. In this instance, I'm perfectly happy with the exposure that I captured in frame, so I'm not going to bother with that. Red eye removal is pretty much what you'd expect it to do. If you have red eyes from a flash, this will take care of them. Eye whitening. Now if I zoom in here, you'll see if I boost this up, the eyes are drastically whitened. And Eye Enhancer basically applies clarity and detail to the eye pupils and a bit of sharpening. I'm going to bring that up as well. And dark circles removal does exactly what you'd think it would do. If the person has a little bit of dark circles under their eyes, it will decrease them. So just with those 3 settings applied, you can turn that off, turn it back on, off, and back on. You can see it does a good bit of improvement on this photo. Now the next 2 are ones I probably would never use, but for some people who are in the magazine industry or they retouch photos for a living, I could see them possibly using these. The first is slim face. I'll zoom out here. So you see if I apply this, the face gets a pinched in, slimmed view. Out, in, out. And enlarge eyes does exactly what you'd think it would do. Enlarge eyes. Now this can go to comical proportions, but I don't know why you'd want to use this, but for some people who are in the business, I guess enlarging eyes is something they do on a regular basis, and if you do, you could definitely find this tool to be very handy. The next one is eyebrow improve, and it basically just darkens up the eyebrows. You'll see here as I apply that, it gets dark, turn it off, light, dark. I'll leave these as is. And the last 3 here apply to lips and teeth. Lip saturation just makes the lips a bit more saturated. You can increase the redness. You can also darken them up. And if there were teeth being shown in this portrait, you could apply teeth whitening as well. So those are the 3 new signature features of Luminar. As I said previously, Luminar is a tool that can be used standalone by itself, or you can use it as a plugin for Lightroom, Photoshop, or Apple Photos, or Adobe Photoshop Express for that matter. And if you use it standalone, you'll find that there are a number of deficiencies compared with Lightroom, and they all mostly center around the catalog tool or the digital asset management. In Luminar, you can favorite a photo, you can reject it, and you can apply a number of different stars from 1 to 5. You've also got these labels here that you can apply, red, yellow, green, blue, purple, unlabeled, etc. And you can sort and filter based upon these items. Now, one thing you are missing in Luminar is the ability to filter by metadata, camera metadata, especially EXIF data. So you can't filter by f-stop, or you can't filter by lens used, or you can't filter by camera body. Those are things that I do a good bit in Lightroom, and I really miss the ability to do that in Luminar. The other thing you can't do, which is a pretty significant deficiency still at this point, is you cannot apply keywords to your photos upon import or at any point. There is just no keyword ability in Luminar. And this is something that was promised back when Luminar 3 was introduced with the dam, but they still have not added it. So I'm hoping that's something that they are working on and something that will be addressed at a future time. Hopefully sometime soon, because it's a feature I definitely would like to use. But if you can live with those deficiencies, Luminar 4 is a great photo editing tool. Its digital asset management, while it is basic, does allow some basic importing and logging and rating of photos and filtering by those criteria. And for the price, you really can't beat it. Luminar is under $100. It goes on sale frequently, but it's generally $99, and I believe sometimes it goes down to $89. And for what you get compared to Lightroom, it is a definite option you should consider. So hope you liked this video. If you did, please click the thumbs up button. And if you haven't already, please click subscribe. And I will see you in the next one.